I'm Edie Lush, and I'm here inside the Hub Culture studio. It's Davos 2019, and we've moved from buzzword to reality in terms of blockchain, haven't we?
Definitely, I think 2018 is really a reality check.
Okay, a reality check. So, with me to discuss all of the implications of what that means, really pleased to be joined by a couple of guests today. First off, we've got Daniel Peled. He's the co-founder of ORBS and Hexa Labs. Tell me, first of all, why are you here? What brought you here to talk about these issues?
So it's my first time in Davos.
Welcome.
Super enjoying it. I think Davos is bringing together a lot of thought leadership, different CEOs and leaders of influential startups. So being part of the ecosystem and also part of the MIT Alliance has been very beneficial to us. So we're enjoying it. And
Good. That's fantastic. Now, first of all, you've developed a blockchain protocol, right?
Yes.
Tell me why you decided to do that, first of all.
That's a great question. Actually, we started on the investment side in 2013. We got exposed to the technology, to blockchain. We bought Bitcoin at 1,000. The price dropped to 150.
Right.
But where we saw the opportunity was actually in other protocols, in other digital assets. So we started investing in Ethereum, in Golem, in Gnosis, in other tokens, and that has been successful. The growth of the market, growth of the ecosystem. In 2017, where the hype cycle was completely crazy and a lot of companies were raising a lot of money in the billions, and we were a bit cynical actually about a lot of the startups, because in the regular startup world about 1% of the startups succeed statistically. In the blockchain space we think much less are going to succeed because there was very easy money, very low governance, and the technology is very mature. So we changed our investment strategy. Instead of investing in white paper, we would go to real companies that have track record, that have governance, that have already a business model, revenue, and we help them transition into the blockchain ecosystem, how they can utilize tokenization within their existing ecosystem. That has been very successful. We created a whole consulting arm to do that. We help these companies raise funds and advise them on the technology side. But when they actually try to transition their ecosystem on top of Ethereum, it was very hard for them. The transaction throughput is very low, the fees are very high, there's issues with governance, with updates. And after we analyzed the third generation blockchain ecosystem, we thought that there's an opportunity to develop another protocol from the ground up. And we're very requirement driven, working very closely with design partners, with real enterprises and big companies, and to develop, to cater to their needs. And this is ORBS. And we also have a non-profit foundation. We try to utilize blockchain technology for social impact. And we also have a mining business, so we're across the different verticals.
Interesting. So tell me about some of the companies that you've invested in. What are they doing?
Sure. So I think we believe in three main verticals. There are others, obviously, but we already see tractions and revenues being made and growth year over year. One of them is obviously on the protocol level. We think the innovation in blockchain is really at the core infrastructure, the decentralized nature of the technology. And it's still very immature days, but we see the growth of some of the protocols. If you look at Bitcoin, the last 10 years, amazing growth. If you look at Ethereum in the last 5 years, and from 30 cents to the peak, $1,000, that has been almost a 4,000x growth, wealth creation to all the different actors in the ecosystem. It's really a new ways to be able to build companies and ecosystems using tokenization and blockchain technology. And we believe the core innovation is there. If you look about blockchain, essentially is a database, and the new core feature is the trustless nature. And it's all on the underlying protocol. We don't think there will be a company on top of Ethereum that would be bigger than Ethereum, because essentially they're using the underlying token for the security of the network. So the network effect is to the protocol level. Secondly, we invested in exchanges. If this ecosystem taught us anything, that people want to speculate, they want to be able to be in this liquid market 24/7, completely global. So some of the exchanges had tremendous growth, and that's a real business model. They're taking fees from both sides and growing very quickly. And the last thing is security. We think that's one of the biggest issues. If you want this ecosystem to become mainstream, it's not enough that we created a new asset class, which I think is amazing. It's the first time we have the ability to create a digital scarcity, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other digital assets. But now the question is, how do we secure them? A lot of people within the ecosystem think that because we can hold the private key, we can become our own banks. We don't agree with that so much. Obviously, we do like the decentralized nature and the ability that there are check and balances. But at the end of the day, the mainstream would want somebody else, an expert, to secure their funds. If I think about my parents, it would be negligence if they would try to protect their private key. So for mainstream adoption and Wall Street and pension funds to come into the ecosystem, I think we do need very strong custodial solutions and potentially also integrated with insurances in order for the ecosystem to keep growing.
Finally, I want you to give me an example of where you think blockchain can make a real impact in a social impact way.
That's a great question. I'm thinking about it a lot actually because in the end of the day, blockchain is a database.
Right.
Obviously, there is the new asset class that's been created, which I think is great, and there's a lot of political thought. What is money and what gives it its power and so on. But if you think about the technology itself, blockchain is a database essentially, and there are trade-offs. So centralized database will always be faster, they will be cheaper, they will be more private. But blockchain, the robustness, the ability to not have a middleman and not have the data secured just in one place, but across all the nodes, obviously has great advantage. But right now it's a bit immature to be applicable for most of the business world that requires speed and privacy and low costs. So if I look 5-10 years where I think this will go and will have a great impact, I actually look at it a little bit in a way how open source developed. Today open source has a tremendous impact on all of our lives. Almost all of the systems are open source. If you think about Linux and Android operating system, if you think about databases such as MSQL, if you think about programming languages such as Java and C, and that's great because it lowers the barriers to entry. But what is really intriguing is that even the most profitable, the monopolies companies are opening source their technology because they understand it's their advantage in order to really create adoption within the development ecosystem. So a great example is Facebook opening React Native to the community. Another example is Google with TensorFlow, which has a huge impact on the AI community. And the reason they're doing it, if you look at Google for an example, with the Google Play, we had Apple, they were a monopoly on the OS. So if Google would try to compete and hold the code themselves, I don't think they would be able to onboard Samsung, Huawei, and the other players. But open sourcing the code, they were able to create a real competition to Apple OS. But I think blockchain can even take this a step further in open source, because today you can open source the code, the server, but you can't open source a live instant of that server. So essentially, even though Google Play is open source, Google is still very powerful because they can decide who will be on the App Store, they can ban applications and so on. But blockchain will enable to decentralize also that. And I think this is really where the innovation is. Any ecosystem that is deployed with different partners, I think the core would be decentralized. So if that ecosystem, somebody abuses its power, you can fork it, and there's a balance of check and power. And I think that's great.
I really appreciate you stopping by the Hub Culture studio.